Well, welcome to this BC Strategies podcast. My name is Kevin Kieller, and I'm going to moderate this particular podcast. We are going to focus on Enterprise Connect. Everyone here, there was more BC Strategies experts at Enterprise Connect, but all of the people here were there, and this is who we could assemble in this particular group. So we're going to quickly give you our thoughts on, the new location, first time in Vegas, what we liked, what we didn't like. And maybe most importantly, kind of what are the key takeaways that you brought back from the show, and that kind of, for the audience, what did they learn or what should they be thinking about? To start us off, let's go to someone who always has excellent insights and is also, like myself, based in Toronto, Canada. So that you get two double marks for that. Jon Arnold. So over to you, Jon.
All righty. Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So I'll start by saying, how about a rating on a 10-point scale? I am going to give it a 7.
Okay.
So I think a lot of us had very mixed feelings about the show. Blair loyalties are kind of questionable at this point, but you know what? I think overall, obviously change was needed, and the change in venue was really a problem for everybody to adjust to, because nobody knew where the hell we were going, at least on day one. But I felt that the venue itself and the turnout were a pretty good fit. I thought it was kind of right sized. The venue didn't seem too big. Wasn't hard to get anywhere. We weren't running like 10 minutes across or up and down different levels and stuff. So it was easy to kind of catch as much as you could while you were there. I thought the content from what I saw was overall is good. It's consistent with every other Enterprise Connect event. Keynotes too promotional. That's always a problem. Not shy to say about that. But I thought that was interesting. I can't remember where I saw the stat. It might have been from you, Moshe. I thought I read somewhere like 60% of the attendees were first timers, were new. Do you remember that, Moshe?
It wasn't from me, but it's possible that number is floating around.
I think it came from Enterprise Connect.
And it was 60, I believe it was 68%. Which was amazing.
That's huge. That is huge. Now, obviously, it says a lot of the regulars didn't come, but so you can read it both ways, right? But I think the opportunity is there. I think there are several pieces that line up well that could make this a good show in the future. The fact that they've committed to a space, the show will likely go on. They can always back out last minute. But, when you combine first of all, they've made it clear they're not hiding it anymore. It is a CX show, for better or worse. So they've kind of conceded defeat there. I think that you can't just make a show around UC and telephony anymore. And that's good. So I think they're moving in the right direction with AI and CX. The new blood that we see from kind of Eric kind of moving into the background, and now Justin being the face of the show, that's a clear kind of apostrophe on all of that stuff, that it is a CX focused show now. Can they bring it next year? We'll see. But I think the change in venue, I got used to it pretty quick. I think we all kind of miss parts of the Gaylord as much as we hate the Gaylord, right? But I think there's enough pieces there that say, okay, you make a clean break from Orlando. This show could now be anything we want it to be. So it all comes from the top to me, and I'll stop talking. It's the vision. If they take away enough from this event and get the right pieces in place, it might be a smaller show, but it could be a much better show. And there's plenty of room for innovation in how they format the whole experience to get the right mix of people in there. Because as we know, folks, we are the draw. If the customers aren't coming, they're coming to see us. So bring more analysts. So I'll stop there.
Okay. No, that's good. I just want to say I never hated the Gaylord because, I was a consultant for a long time, so new analysts. So I feel I'm less jaded than some of you analysts that have lots more experience. So I never once said anything bad about the Gaylord. But to a long term, I mean, not saying you're old, Robert, but you have a lot of experience. So what was your takeaway from Enterprise Connect 2026 for the first time being in Vegas?
Thank you, Kevin. And it's okay. You can call me old. The first thing I want to, I believe the 65% number for new attendees, because in the opening keynotes, they did a show of hands for people who were first attendees. It was a very significant amount. And then everyone clapped. It almost felt like some kind of a church thing, you know, everyone just clap for our first timers. But so that probably is true. You would expect some attrition when you move to a completely different time zone and a completely different coast. So that's just par for the course. One observation is the over focus on agentic AI. I overheard two customers speaking to each other, talking about how one said, I was in the collaboration session and I had to walk out because it turned out to be another session about agentic AI. So we're likely to, you know, if everything's agentic AI, security is agentic AI, customer experience is agentic AI, that we're likely to get a lot of fatigue from that. That being said, it is what's happening right now. And as you said, as an experienced old person, I tend to become a technology historian. And I recalled, as I was thinking about this today, a term that Gartner came up with back in 2003, computer-enabled business processes. If any of you remember that, CEBP, it's the acronym that they thought was great, that no one ever used. No one ever went to VoiceCon or a trade show and said, I need CEBP right now. You know, but that's kind of what they're doing, trying to do now with all of these workflow orchestrators. Granted, there's more robust technology to do it, so it definitely has its place. As far as it becoming a CX show, I would say I hope not, because and I think we're going to see a separation in a way. On-premises telecom systems, you have a couple of vendors that really are taking a different position. It reminds me of a vice president of the luxury brand, a vice president of sales for a luxury division of an automotive company spoke to me one day, and he said, you know, the luxury brand isn't there to make money, it's to elevate the main brand. And I kind of see that with Mitel has this OpenScape. I saw a demo of it. It's JITC military certified. And then the via Nexus announcement, it's this mission critical, robust platform. So you're going to have very few organizations that need that criticality, but it elevates their position as the reliable on-premise or multi-channel or, you know, multi-path solutions, and kind of gives anybody who has the, you know, it has the wariness of AWS going down and their entire customer experience imploding with it. It gives them a reason to look on premise. So it'll be interesting to see. I think there's a lot of potential and a lot of changes that will happen with on premise, even with more intelligent endpoint devices in the end. I just think right now there is quite a separation from it, but we don't need another CX only show. So hopefully it will be a little broader than that in the long run.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I also, with you, Robert, I mean, first of all, I think you got to change your title. It says consultant now. I like you're going to be a technology historian. So
I would love that. I would love that.
That's a cool title. So that's going to be going forward. That's going to be your title. But yeah, I hope it's not a customer experience show, because there's lots of those. But I do agree with what Jon said, which is every discussion about AI eventually use customer experience as the example, because I think that that's the easiest go-to for ROI. And every discussion about customer experience eventually went to AI and collaboration and everything else, because that's the new shiny thing. So,
right.
But I there does need to be space, you know, Mitel, I had a good briefing about some of their frontline things. I mean, there are other things other than customer experience and AI that help organizations be successful. So, Moshe, you're new to the BCStrategies, but obviously not new to this technology world, and you also bring, you know, a strong channel focus. I don't know if you want to comment on that, but how was your Enterprise Connect experience in Vegas?
Yeah, we covered the event. That was really fun because we had a great, you know, high traffic location. People were just stopping by. We actually had more work than we could actually handle at some point, but we managed to get everything done. Covering for Technology Reseller News with Doug Green. That was a great experience. The VIT staff was great. Was a little bit different without Eric, but I did get to see Eric and speak with him. And, you know, he's enjoying retirement. So, you know, the big picture for me is that Eric is having a good time. Eric is enjoying life a little bit more. Eric is doing a little bit less work and just, you know, really living life as one should be doing. The big takeaway for me is data sovereignty. I mean, I think Robert really hit the nail on the head. Is that, we went from basically touting pure cloud as the only solution to Avaya always sort of saying, and Mitel always sort of saying, no, let's keep it hybrid. It's going to make sense eventually. And now we've gotten back there, right? So all these companies understanding that, hey, if we can control our data locally, that's a massive opportunity, not just for us to be more secure, but for the channel. So I'm tying that back to the channel.
Yeah.
This entire opportunity exists around, again, the intersection of AI and data, and making sure those data are clean and being organized properly. I mean, I think that's the real big opportunity. Obviously, the buzzword AI is not going to stop. It's a little bit annoying because it's all CX, and I'd like to see some other use cases other than just CX, because I know that there are other ones that are not just helping customers essentially.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and thanks. Yeah, and I was on the part of a segment of your podcast, and you did have a great with Doug, and that was a great high traffic area where you had to many times go past you. So that was great. So, and yeah, I saw that part of that that podcast. That was excellent, just to get all the different voices. And that's, to me, the best thing about Enterprise Connect is having the multiple vendors there, because you get different points of view. And I hope that we don't lose that, because you can go to a vendor specific show and obviously it's all about, the vendor and the customers using the vendor platform. Whereas Enterprise Connect, for me, has always been about that diversity of opinions. You mentioned Avaya, Mitel. I also want to throw in there Cisco, because Cisco is, in a sense, slow to move to the cloud. And that's really working in their favor now with like data sovereignty. And, they're also able to say, hey, if you want to do telephony or contact center on-prem, you can do that as well. And that hybrid story is actually working much in favor for, organizations that may have been slower to move to the cloud. So customer experience, Blair, that's a big area that you cover. So I'm sure that, I don't know, if it becomes a CX show, is that a good thing? What did you think of the Enterprise Connect in Vegas, and what were your key takeaways?
Oh, so many thoughts, so many thoughts. First, I'm glad the drinking game wasn't the term agentic, because, yeah.
At day one, we wouldn't make it to noon. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as the location, so I'm glad next year it's going to be at the MGM Grand, because it's one hotel. The problem this year was, being at Caesars Forum, there was no main hotel. So we had events at the Paris, we had events at the Venetian, all over the place. So normally, everything, like for analysts, we get invited to a lot of receptions and breakfasts and whatever, and we can, go from one to the other to the other. This time we weren't able to. So I missed a lot of events because they were just too far. Just getting from one hotel to another in Vegas is hard enough, but then getting from one restaurant to another, I mean, it can take a half hour just walking within the hotel. So that was my main issues. I didn't get to go to as many events as I would have liked. I didn't get to do as many things as I would have liked. And even the meetings, I had to space them out. Usually I can have back-to-back meetings in the media room, but now some of the meetings were in, they were all over the place. So it made it a little harder. So hopefully next year, just one hotel, that'll make it easier. So I was trying to find differentiation in what the vendors were saying, and it was challenging. So many of them had the same story, all about agentic, of course. And it's a problem for them, trying to figure out how they're going to differentiate. So verticalization is one way. So now I heard, 4 different vendors talk about how they're verticalizing, and they had new applications for healthcare. So it's really hard to find that differentiation. So I think the vendors are working hard on that, but it's been tricky. Not one good thing. There were lots of good things. It was nice to hear that voice made a comeback. So whether it's in the contact center or, outside of the contact center, voice is that natural interface, and it's what people use to interact, with people and with AI and machines. So it's really good to see voice making a comeback. And so we heard a lot about that, how the people who own the voice channel, have all this data and information and customer information. So they can really benefit in that area. There weren't that many new announcements that were surprising. And the Salesforce one, I wouldn't say was surprising, but that definitely got a lot of people's attention. Salesforce now saying that they're a CCaaS vendor and they have the voice channel now. So that's going to shake up things a little bit in the CCaaS world and the CRM world. Zendesk has already had a voice channel, and TalkDesk already has some CRM, but I think we're going to see more of the CRM and CCaaS vendors really figuring out, do we need to do acquisitions, do more than just the integrations we're doing. So that was interesting, a lot of discussions about Salesforce. As far as your question about should Enterprise Connect just be a CX show, I say no. Its roots are in voice. We remember when it was VoiceCon, when it was all about SIP trunking and, all that. So I would hate for it to just become a CX show, because there are some pure CX shows, although they're not all as analyst friendly. Like Contact Center Week, they don't even give analysts a discount. Forget about, free passes or having us speak. So I'm happy that Enterprise Connect is more focused on CX, but I would hate for it to just be CX focused.
Yeah, no, that's good insight, and it's good to hear from you, because I know that's obviously you spend a lot of time in the CX space, but that was my feeling, that yes, there are other CX focused shows, and Enterprise Connect to me was I liked it because it was like a little bit of everything with a little bit of all the different vendors, right? So absolutely.
Let me ask you a question, Kevin. You're the Microsoft guy. What's your take on them being virtually nowhere?
Absent.
That's
Yeah.
exactly
So I appreciate, so that my roots are in the Microsoft guy. So I get asked, and I presented, this is like my 15th year kind of presenting the independent Microsoft overview. I mean, I think that, Microsoft and I had some chats, kind of after and before. And I think that, they're putting their dollars in other events. I think that, on one hand, they've had huge booths in the past and they didn't want to have a smaller booth. This year, Cisco had a smaller presence and Microsoft didn't want to, they thought maybe that would be read negatively. I mean, I would encourage them to be there and to be part of the conversation. I think, the point around a lot of the messaging of the vendors is the same. So I think that you want to show up, have the conversations, and you want to show, okay, this is what we're saying, security is important. Everybody says that, of course, but then you need to show, and this is how we in our product set bring that to life. And the vendors that I work with, that's what I encourage them to do. And I think Microsoft missed the opportunity to both hear different perspectives and also just be there in the conversation. So you don't need to have a huge booth, but I think it was a real miss not to show up, because I'm going to attend CommsV next. That's Microsoft specific. There's the M365 community event, all Microsoft. I mean, Heather McGowan was a futurist that presented. I really enjoyed her presentation. She talks about how we all live in an echo chamber now because of the algorithm. But if you're only going to vendor specific trade shows, I think you're getting to hear all the same things. And your product team, your marketing team, they need to hear and see what other people are saying, because I think a lot of the vendors they think they're being unique, and they're exactly us as analysts. We hear the same thing. We're like, that's exactly the same thing that we heard. So I think it was a miss. I would encourage all the vendors, to show up. I get it that if ROI is badge scans from customers, that's a tough ROI. I think some of the vendors that I talked to, they were open. These were some of the larger vendors that I work with. They were open to the fact that isn't how they, factor in ROI. They appreciate the conversation with the analysts. They appreciate seeing their competitors' booths and even talking to their competitors, right? Because there's a lot of movement. So I hope that we continue on Enterprise Connect to double down on, the multi-vendor, multi-perspective. I hope it continues to be as friendly as it has been to the analyst, allowing us both to participate and speak. That's what I would love. And if it's at a better venue, this was my first conference in Vegas, which nobody could believe.
Wow.
Once again, I'm new to kind of, as a consultant, I'm working with enterprise customers. So I'm not going, but so as a relatively new analyst, people couldn't believe it. They all had that reaction, Blair. So the one thing I also want to add is they moved the normal time slot down from 45 minutes to 30 minutes. Yeah. that was too compressed. So for example, that futurist Heather McGowan, I loved her presentation. I had a recording of it. I played it for some of my family members and loved it, but it felt like it was a 45-minute presentation wedged into like a 30-minute or whatever the slot was. So she was going through some super mind, bending or things you really want to think about, but it was so fast that you really didn't have any time. And I think I felt the same thing in my session. I had probably 45 minutes of information I tried to share, did it in 30 minutes. So I talked super fast like I'm doing now.
I felt the same way with my session.
5 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah, if you're going to have 3 panelists on a panel and only 30 minutes, it makes it really challenging. So yeah, I would go back to the old 45 minutes. Also, the other thing they did that I didn't really think was a good idea, they didn't have specific times for the keynotes and then for some of the sessions on the last day. So they had a 2-hour block with like 4 different sessions, but they didn't say what time each was.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a big miss because it's really hard to schedule our meetings, and we can't sit for 2 hours, in a keynote thing to hear everything. So so I missed some of the ones that I wanted to hear because I didn't know exactly what time they would be.
Hey, so for the Informer folks who are going to watch this, Kevin, aside from Microsoft not being there, I'd say who else should have been there or should be there next year that we didn't see? I think there should be more security vendors. There should be probably the Oracles of the world, SAPs, people who are in the enterprise software business, right, and security spaces. To me, this is a new opportunity to reinvent the whole concept of this show. That's what I think. I'm sure there are others too that we could think of who probably should be there, don't you think?
Well, more CRM vendors as we talk about CCaaS and CRM coming together more, and also data lake companies, CMP companies. It's all about the data, so more data companies.
CDP?
Snowflake and CDP. Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry. But yeah, and more data companies, data lake types of companies, and companies like Snowflake. I mean, there are so many other vendors that could be there.
Yeah, so let me we'll continue the conversation for a few more minutes. Robert, I know you had another thing that you're going to. So if you want to drop off, I just don't want people to think that you're somehow like, dropping off on us or whatever, hanging up on us. But any parting comments before you move on?
Yeah, I'm not dropping off because I'm not offended of being called old. I agree actually with the short sessions. The session that I did was too short. The 911 session, not enough time for questions, which is really where a lot of times you don't really know what the customers want to hear or want to know about until you get to the question part. So that was unfortunate, but thank you. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Our lunch meetup was fun, and looking forward to next year.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For your insights. Okay. So, and the last thing I would say is, originally there wasn't a lock note on the schedule, which was always been one of my favorite sessions. So I had emailed Eric. I'm sure more other people had, and then there was a lock note. I was thrilled. I actually then got to be included in the lock note. It was on the big stage, so this was my first time being on the big stage. So I feel like, okay, I graduated to the big stage. But there was one thing, because on that, as part of the lock note, and I like this soundbite. Normally, I don't like to listen to myself back, but I said, no one needs AI. But what they're looking for is the magic that they think AI implies. And it was like that was the 3 days. Everybody thought AI was going to deliver something else. If you're in the contact center, maybe it was reduction in average handle time or call deflection. Or if you were a workplace experience person, maybe you thought it was going to make things easier for people or increase productivity, even though most people don't measure productivity. So everyone wants some magic. It's just not clear what magic each individual person wants when they say, I'm implementing AI or agentic AI. So I do think that, there was more talk about ROI, but the path from saying, I want AI, no one wants AI. They want something that they believe AI will give them, more revenue, less cost. And I think so people need to stop saying, that they want AI. They want, like say why. Keep asking why till you get to some measurable benefit. And then you're much more likely, if you implement AI, to get whatever that measurable thing is. So that was a big takeaway for me. And one of the reasons I think people are having poor outcomes, because they think they want, they tell people I'm successful if I have AI, but that doesn't equal success. So
yeah, I told Eric along those lines, it needs to be more content about like AI strategy from the top, right? How to really align executive priorities with line of business priorities, stuff like that. That's less about the technology and more about the business end of things.
yeah, maybe it's
Yeah.
like driving revenue with AI, or whatever, reducing costs with AI. I mean, I think the contact center vendors are now saying that there may be some labor impact. I think for many years they wanted to pretend that there's going to be no impact on customer service agents. I think now they're being more honest and saying, yes, there will be some labor disruption. I don't know. They should be saying that because there will be labor disruption, but maybe that's a longer and broader conversation. So, okay. So rapid fire round. What do you hope for in 2027 at the MGM? A sentence or, one thing. Jon, to you.
Oh, no. Yeah. Longer sessions, more opportunity to network. And you know what? They should have like meet the analyst sessions. That's what if they want to leverage us to be there, they could drive a lot more interest and value getting us involved.
Nice does that at their customer events.
Yeah.
There you go. So Blair, 2027, what are you looking for to see?
I want Jim Burton's wine tasting event back.
Well, they had the whiskey thing, Mytel, but it was like 3 p.m.
So anybody who wants to sponsor Jim Burton's wine tasting for 2027, sponsorship opportunities are open now. Contact Jim Burton. Okay, Moshe, over to you. 2027, what do you want to see?
Yeah, I want to see vendors telling different stories and doing different things, because if every vendor's doing the same thing, there's really no differentiator. I counted at least 15 vendors who were doing exactly the same thing, had the exact same interview. You try to ask different questions, you get the same blanket response. And that's very frustrating for a reporter who's trying to give information to people. So I think the vendors need to take a step back, look at what their competitors are actually doing, which is exactly the same thing as them, I can assure you of that, and try to do something different.
Okay.
So Kevin, I actually do have a more serious answer.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'd like to see the keynotes actually have meat and not just be vendor promos and vendor sales pitches.
Yep.
They were all talking about, their new announcements and what they're offering. And I didn't see thought leadership and what, actionable, here's what you need to be doing and thinking about. So I'd like to see more from the vendor keynotes as far as real strategy rather than product.
Okay. That was funny because I was going to say that, but I will say one other thing with respect to the vendor keynotes, which is the audience at Enterprise Connect is not the same as when you run your vendor specific event. So I felt a lot of the vendors, they were saying, this is what's new, but they forgot that the audience may not be an existing customer. So it's like, please test your messaging. It's not to your customer base. It is to prospects that may be interested, but don't know a lot. So give them an on-ramp, explain what your products do, and then maybe talk about what differentiates the new products. I know as BCStrategies, we've often offered to message test some of these keynotes because we see so many. Some vendors have taken us up on the past, more should, because I think we can say, look, that isn't going to play well because everybody else is saying the exact same thing. So hopefully, go, Jon.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Kevin, because again, another opportunity for Informa is I think maybe AI will help them, but really dig into the demographics of the profile, right? Of who was there. Yeah. If we have so much new faces, what kind of people are coming? And that should drive what kind of programming and how they structure the event next year.
Can I tell you what the people who were coming? They were channel people. That's essentially a channel show at this point. Obviously, there's just no programming for the channel. And I think I spoke to 100 people easily, just not actually recording interviews, but just general conversations and private conversations. And most of those people were in the channel. They had channel titles. They were channel chiefs. So that's another massive.
Yeah.
And
Well, maybe BC Strategies needs to bring back its BC Summit and UC Summit, because that was very channel focused.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And yeah, so and if we can make that happen, we've tried to. It's just a question of, yeah, how are we gonna, where's the interest and what have you. And one last thing for Informa is I would love to see some type of real-time audience polling during the sessions. I think that would be useful, for the vendors, and it also would just reinforce, kind of during presentations or whatever, like what is the audience looking for? Because I think, we certainly, all of us at BC Strategies, when we're presenting, we're trying to provide value to the audience. But of course, with shortened sessions and no Q&A and whatever, it's hard to read the audience. So some form of real-time audience polling, and now it's easy to do on mobile phones. I've been suggesting this for many years when it was harder, but now it's simple. I think that would give us more kind of data analysis. So
Well, and
anyway,
Cisco Slido.
yeah,
That's what Cisco Slido does.
Yeah,
exactly.
and there's a lot of tools to do that. I think you just need to kind of make that part of, the program. Yes.
One more quick thing. No one's mentioned it yet, but the overlap with HIMSS,
Oh,
right? That pulled a lot of people away. You guys were there Monday, right, Moshe?
We were there Monday. The show was massive. There's
Huge,
a lot
right?
going on. Huge show. I mean, I don't really know the real number, but there were a lot of people there.
It sucked a lot of people away from this event. And so try not to overlap. I know it's both Informa shows, so they had to do it this way. But if you have that captive audience, you're going to get a little bit more engagement. And of course, for us, the conflict was with the Nice Cognigy event. So that's more them scheduling too late rather than Enterprise Connect. But again, if they have a dedicated time and no one else is doing events, they're going to have a much better turnout, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think, we've imparted lots of great insights and opinions. Yeah. And as usual, that's what I love with the BC Strategies Experts.
This is free.
This is free. This is the free. This is the free tier. Imagine the paid tier. How insightful that would be if you engage any of these great BC Strategies experts. But thank you all for your insights. Thanks to Informa and Eric and the team. It's a big undertaking. I'm sure it was hard for them because they weren't familiar with, the venue in the same way that, we all were with the Gaylord Palms. But this, it was good. We wish them the best, and hopefully they'll listen to this, take some of our advice, and I'm sure advice they're hearing from other people. And all the best for Enterprise Connect 2027 at the MGM Grand. Thank you. Bye for now.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye all.